Hello everybody and welcome to the next spoiler roundup here for the Core 2026 set. We're here looking at the Rogue cards, starting with the Trish Scarborough article, and then we got some cards we got to check out, give our quick thoughts on them, and go from there. You're quite good, but nobody can catch me. Trish Scarborough enjoyed an exciting and dangerous career as a spy for the Black Chamber. She's no stranger to subterfuge, but she also never expected to be at the center of her own conspiracy when a new director arrived to run the organization. After a series of increasingly menial missions, she was strongly encouraged to take time for herself. Suspicious of a director's motives, she dug into the Chamber's records and discovered evidence of corruption going all the way to the top. Rumors of an organization known as the Red Coterie working behind the scenes. Framed for leaking sensitive information, Trish is now on the run and driven to restore her good name. So, you may take an additional action during your turn, which can only be used to evade. Elder Sign effect is +0. After this test resolves, you may disengage from each enemy and move to a connecting location. As we talked about in a previous video here on the channel, this is basically, and almost exactly, Finn Edwards' ability. The Elder Sign is different, the deck building is different, the stat line is similar, but different. I think that the 2 fist as opposed to 3 fist is actually going to be a very relevant change, which is going to put Trish Scarborough in a very similar, albeit different box than Finn Edwards was in. So, we're not going to be talking too much about the specifics of that. I'm not too bothered by it. To me, it's I've always wanted to play a Finn Edwards style with the 05 Rogue deck building, so now I can. Finn still also has this very unique deck building that you can do his decks with him, so I think they're different game pieces to me, and I can find a reason to play both of them. And as I've talked about previously, I'm not too connected to the idea of what the character is compared to what's on the card. They're just play pieces to me personally, but I understand that some people aren't. Back in October, we revealed the new core set for Arkham Horror the card game, which heralds the beginning of an era we're referring to as Chapter 2. With that new core set comes a new set of 5 core investigators, and one of those 5 is Trish Scarborough. Returning to this scene as a new core's rogue investigator, Trish retains her emphasis on sneaking past enemies, but does so in a different way than before. No longer officially a spy, Trish must now use her skills to solve mysteries while being constantly on the run, and this is reflected in her new playstyle. Her innate ability grants her a bonus evade action once per turn, while her Elder Sign ability can let her slip away from every enemy engaged with her, regardless if she succeeds the associated test or not. Her Elder Sign ability comes with the added feature of letting her move to a connecting location, a feature shared with her signature asset Covert Ops, which pairs well with her free evade action each turn. If you manage to pull the Elder Sign while performing an evasion test, you can then use the even combined Covert Ops with Trish's special ability and move 2 locations at once. So Covert Ops, this is Trish's signature. 2-cost asset, talent illicit. As a reaction, if you evade an enemy, exhaust Covert Ops, either draw 1 card or move to a connecting location. They're really signposting. Movement and evasion is huge for the rogue class, and they're going to kind of remain, like this is going to be the space that they're going to live in most frequently for the next little bit. I think this is a powerful signature. It's not like defining that Trish needs it to be Trish, but it's just going to be so much value as the game goes, especially with the Sticky Fingers asset, which we talked about in the last video, which you can find in the video description. Speaking of movement, many other cards in Trish's pre-built deck can boost her mobility, her evasion, or both. Take Olivier Bishop, for example, who grants Trish a bonus to her agility, and therefore her ability to evade enemies, as well as the ability to move locations as a free action once per round. The boost to agility from Olivier works great with breaking and entering, which we will be talking about later in this video, but breaking and entering is back, which lets Trish combine her intellect with her agility for an investigation. Boosting agility also makes it easier to evade enemies, which you can combo with Sticky Fingers for an extra resource, which you can then spend on Silver Tongue, which we're also going to be talking about later in this video. For a bigger boost to your next test, succeeding at a test by 2 or more also gets you extra card draw with Lucky Cigarette Case. And if you happen to commit out of sight to that test, then you can get even more free movement out of it. So they're really, again, signposting. Movement is going to be the secret sauce to the rogue class. While Seekers are still secondary for it, they're really putting it primarily in the rogue class, which I think is a nice distinction. Longtime fans of Arkham Horror the card game will know that extra actions and movement are classic features of the Rogue class, and another thing they have in spades is extra resources. We already mentioned Sticky Fingers, but Trish has some other sources of extra resources in her deck as well. For example, we have Thieves Kit, which we've already talked about, but that's back. Can let you use Trish's agility for an investigation instead of her intellect, netting you a resource if you succeed. While the event Paint the Town Red, which we'll talk about later, pulls an enemy out of the encounter deck that you must contend with, it can also give you an extra multiple resources. Plus, Trish can also just evade enemies that enemy with her abilities. Finally, though it doesn't technically grant additional resources, Prestidigitation, which I'm very excited to talk about later in this video, does let you play fast play an item asset for a discount on the condition that you must return something to your hand at the end of your turn. This can let you whip out an M1903 Hammerless on an enemy you just evaded, attacking with Trish's agility instead of her much lower combat skill. With how her actions flow together, Trish can adapt on the fly to any situation, which is only compounded by her additional deck-building options. Veterans of Arkham Horror the card game will recall that the original version of Trish Scarborough could include secret cards in her deck, and this new version is no different. If you're curious about what sort of secret cards you can find in Trish's pre-built deck, be sure to check out the preview of Joe Diamond and the secret class back in November. Speaking of seeking, as a former spy on the run, it's only natural that Trish would be hunted by her associates at the Black Chamber. Her signature weakness, the Black Chamber Operative, does exactly that, chasing Trish down no matter where she tries to hide. Since the Chamber is fully familiar with Trish's methods, she'll have to work a bit harder to give them the slip, leaving clues behind as false leads in order to get them off her tail. It's going to take all of Trish's resourcefulness and skill in order to fend off the operatives she once thought were her colleagues, but with quick thinking and a friend or two, she can pull it off while accomplishing the main mission to boot. So, Black Chamber Operative, Hunter, Prey, Trish Scarborough deck only. Sorry, Trish Scarborough only, not Trish Scarborough deck only, so it's only going to go after Trish. Forced, after you evade Black Chamber Operative, place one of your clues on your location. If you cannot, this enemy readies, engages you, and makes an immediate attack. So this thing is just killable, just has 2 health, so there's like methods you can use to just defeat this guy. But he's pretty tough in terms of like if Trish has to deal with him herself. Because I mean like 4 Fist and 4 Foot, those are 2 big mountains for Trish to climb. Also, the evading, like that's going to be her primary method of getting rid of it, or like managing it. So having that be such a heavy restriction, I think is a very notable hurdle that Trish is going to have to climb over. I think that this is going to be a pretty impactful weakness. But I think also in higher player counts, it's going to be pretty easy to draw it and then look at your goon and be like, you kill? You kill now, please? And then they do, and then that solves it. But I think in lower player counts, like obviously solo, but even in 2-player, I think that this is going to be a little bit more of a relevant signature weakness. A dashing rogue with her evasive maneuvers and ability to adapt on the fly, Trish Scarborough is the perfect example of what the rogue class has to offer in Chapter 2 of Arkham Horror the card game. Look forward to our previews of the Mystic class in the coming weeks. Very exciting. I think Trish is a really cool kit, and I'm excited to see what comes out in the starter decks with Andre Patel, but I think it's a very nice start here. I also have to quickly take us a look, because I never talked about this guy in the last video, but we got a Bodyguard 2, so I'm going to just talk about this here quickly. 3 cost, 2 experience. Bodyguard may be assigned damage dealt to other investigators or location. Soaks for 3 and 2. As a reaction, when Bodyguard is defeated, deal 2 damage to enemy or location. This was spoiled the day that I recorded the last Guardian spoiler roundup, and I said I was going to talk about it in the next video, and it completely slipped my mind, so I'm here talking about it now. So this card, I think, is a much better upgrade than Bodyguard 1. I think Bodyguard 1 has been, like, it doesn't look that appealing, but I think that there's the world where Bodyguard 2, I actually think, is a very, very playable ally. He has a lot of soak, he has a really good ability, and I think that he's very good for his cost. I think that, like, if you have 4 Fists, you're going to be more likely to run Logan Hastings in Chapter 2, but I think in Daniela, Bodyguard 2 is going to be a more exciting place to go. I know some people said they probably would run Alexi instead, but I think that Alexi caps in a way that Bodyguard 2 doesn't, right? Like, in theory, it's nice to not lose the game, but in theory, more concrete theory, it's better to, or I guess in practice, it's better to win the game than it is to just not lose the game. So I think that Bodyguard 2 is going to be very relevant for that. And if we do see Charisma in the neutral slot, I think that that's also going to really add things where you might see in Alexi and Bodyguard 2, or like Logan Hastings and Bodyguard 2 as examples. All right. Let's talk about the rogue cards that were spoiled in this last week. We got Paint the Town Red. This is a zero-cost event. Parlay. Search the top 9 cards of the encounter deck for a non-elite enemy. Draw it and gain resources equal to that enemy's printed health. Shuffle the encounter deck. It's a Fortunate Gambit. Faustian Bargain. This is not. Emergency Cash. This is not. I think that what the secret of this card really lies in is that this is actually not an economy card. This is going to be a card that lives as... that kind of just lives in a parlay support place where it's going to support having an enemy to parlay with while giving you some resources back in the time. So it's like not making it a bad draw to get there because you're going to get some payment. Some things for this is that it's the enemy's printed health. So if you grab a small enemy, this might only give you 1 or 2 resources, which is not exactly appealing. And the other thing is that it still has its spawn instructions. So the enemy might not spawn on you, which actually can be pretty nice. Like that can be something that actually can work for it. Do I think that this card is going to be relevant? I don't think so right now with what we see, but I think with further context, if Rogue remains to be the parlay class, and if the design team continues to explore the idea of Rogue being the parlay class, I think Paint the Town Red could be very relevant for that. But right now, I think it's not really that appealing. All right, Another Day, Another Dollar. This, like Studious, is a permanent from the olden days from Circle Undone. It's a 3 experience talent. You begin the game with 2 additional resources. Travis has an opinion that he wishes the Another Day, Another Dollar and Studious were in the Investigator starter decks instead of the core decks, and like the core box, and I think that's a pretty fair stance, and I actually tend to agree with him. I don't necessarily think that these are unplayable. I mean, like, I think Studious it's one of the top 15 cards of Arkham Horror in general, right? And while Another Day, Another Dollar isn't on the same level because generally cards will win you the game more than resources, I still think that this is a nice thing to have. I wish it personally, I agree with Travis, was in the starter decks as opposed to the core set. Especially because I think the Rogue core pool, while much better than the original Rogue core pool, is a little bit strange on its upgrades. It feels a little bit like we have less cards, but I think the cards as a whole are relatively strong. And I think Another Day, Another Dollar is just an example of that thing where it's a nice card, but it would be a little bit more interesting if it was something more engaging to build around as opposed to just more resources. But I do think foundationally it is a nice card to have in the card pool, so it's good that it's here. I just wish it was in the starter decks. All right, then we have, as mentioned, Breaking and Entering's back, and it's pretty much the exact same card. The art is slightly different. The flavor text is changed, and by art is slightly different, I mean you can see that it's moved over. I think the framing is nicer on the new core set. Even though it might look strange, it gives more context to what is happening in the photo. So it's investigate with your book. Add your foot to your book for this investigation. If you succeed by 2 or more, you may automatically evade an enemy at this location. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. I'm personally very happy that this card is back. I think that this is a phenomenal card for the core pool. And I think that this is just a very powerful card that rogues are always going to want. And I think it's just a wonderful staple. I kind of view it as like not as strong as Read the Signs or Spectral Razor, but it's the same kind of bump in consistency and power that I think that you really want your cards to have this impact, right? You want your cards to be powerful without being as strong as, say, Spectral Razor, but still really strong enough that you want to include these in the deck. And I think that Breaking and Entering is really good for that. It's a level 0 card that's going to last into Scenario 8. Like, it's just that damn good. And I think it's nice to have those on cards that are fair but powerful. So I'm really happy that this is here in Core 2026. Okay, but now let's talk about Prestidigitation, because this card is freaking nutters. You remember Sleight of Hand? That card was tabooed a lot. We recorded a video of cards we weren't going to miss from Carcosa, and we talked about how Sleight of Hand, we're going to miss it, but the effect was just too powerful. And lo and behold, there is a new Sleight of Hand, and in some ways it's weaker than Sleight of Hand, but in some ways it's also stronger than Sleight of Hand. So, One cost event. Fast. Play only during your turn. It's a trick. Play an item asset from your hand, reducing its cost by 2. When your turn ends, return an item asset you control to your hand. So, same sort of effects by Sleight of Hand where you get to put an item into play fast. You don't get the full cost reduction on this new one. You're getting like a cost reduced by 1 when all is said and done because you have to pay 1 for this Prestidigitation. So there is more of a limit on it. It's not completely free. Like, did Sleight of Hand? I haven't played Sleight of Hand in like 3 months, and it's... As you get older, you have to push some things out. Yeah, so it also costs 1. So it's like the same sort of cost here. But this one still lets you play an item asset from your hand. You have to pay for it if it costs more than 2, which I think is also still a good balancing factor for this card. But I think that effects like this are still very powerful. And I think that this card also has another upside where it allows you to return an item asset you control to your hand, meaning that you can return the item that you put into play, or, for example, you could return an empty Thieves Kit to your hand. You could return an empty M1903 Hammerless to your hand, giving you more uses from your assets with limited uses. For me, personally, I think that that is the biggest and most exciting selling point of non-broken use of Prestidigitation, where it allows you to have more of an impact with these cards that have limited uses. And I think for me personally, this has been the thing that has been most exciting and appealing about the new core cards. I think the designers have done a really good job of making it more viable and more of a reason to play cards with limited uses. And I think that's just such a wonderful win from the design team. I actually also think that this card is good for the core pool. I think that this is a card that the rogues should have in their class. It's probably the only thing in this current new core set that gives that old feeling of the rogues kind of cheating. So I really enjoy it being here. And I think that as a whole, it's going to impact the card pool positively more than negatively. I could see it being tabooed in some way, right? But I do think that this still... I'm actually pro Prestidigitation, even though it is, I think, a little bit scary from what we've seen with Sleight of Hand. And there could be people saying, like, just, like, learn from history or be doomed to repeat it. But I think that this is an effect that is worse than Sleight of Hand, generally, for, like, the really silly stuff, but still has that power of Sleight of Hand. So I personally am pretty excited about it being here. All right, last thing we have to talk about for the Rogue cards is this talent asset, Silver Tongue. This is our 4th of the 5 cards from this talent asset. 2 cost, Lightning Bolt, spend 1 resource, you get +1 book for a skill test or +1 foot, and +2 if it's an evasion or a parlay. Again, signposting here that parlay is going to be very big. Parlay was also in the Seeker one too, right? So they're kind of signposting that these are the 2 classes that Parlay is going to live in, which I think is a very nice spot for them to be. I think that if the design team wants to support Parlay, they need to support it from the get-go and have it always be there, and I think that this is a nice piece for that. I think generally this card is going to be more for tech. I think it's fine for level 0. The +2 foot for evasion is actually, I think, quite relevant. But I do think that these are all going to scale out. I would love to see upgraded versions of these in the starter decks. I really would. I really would love to see an upgraded version of these in the starter decks. So I hope that they are there because I think that would be really cool. But yeah, I don't have too much to say about these talents. They're there, and there's nothing really right and or wrong with them. I think they're just like fine design cards. Last card we have here is Syndicate Obligations. This is the weakness that we saw from the Trish pack. Revelation, put Syndicate Obligations into your play in your threat area. Forced, after you spend 1 or more resources, take 1 damage. Is a double action, discard it. I like this as a weakness. It's a solve now. It's like a slower version of like the Internal Injury, but at the same time, it also can be one that you need to solve immediately because it might be a faster version of the Internal Injury. And I think as a whole, I'm a big fan of these the weaknesses that they have in the core set. While I personally vibe more with the original core weaknesses, but that's just because I've been playing them for almost a decade of my life, right? So I'm a little bit more like involved with them and I remember them more. I'm very excited to see these new ones in action, and I think they are going to be pretty relevant. And I think in legacy play, I'm actually excited to have more weaknesses in the pool, so I really like the influx that we have here. Syndicate Obligations is very solvable, but it's also one of those things that you don't solve it and suddenly you're like, I could take 1 damage, and then it's like, whew, I don't know if I should take a 2nd damage. And if you're like an event spell slinging deck, this is a solve now or bleed out and die. All right, so yeah, Mystics are the last class to be revealed, so we'll be looking forward to that on the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed this spoiler roundup. If you want to support the channel, liking, commenting, subscribing, you want to go above and beyond, you can join all of our patrons and support me and my ability to make these videos for you. In the meantime, thanks for watching, have a good one, and as always, GG's.